Thank God. Virgo, that is the first thing I want to say to you tonight. Not with irony, not with the performative lightness of someone trying to reframe your pain into something easier to carry. With complete sincerity. Thank God that it ended. Thank God that the door closed. Thank God that whatever force, whether it was your own courage or their own unraveling, or simply the inevitable collapse of something that was never structurally sound, removed from your daily life, what had been living inside it and calling itself love. Because what was in that house was not love. It had the shape of love, it wore the vocabulary of love. It arrived in your life wearing the costume love wears when it wants to be let in, the warmth, the attention, the particular way of being seen that made you feel in the early chapters that something genuinely rare had found you. But costumes are not the thing itself. And what lived beneath the costume of this connection, what was actually present in your home, in your nervous system, in the slow and quiet erosion of your sense of self that you may have barely noticed while it was happening, was something considerably darker than what it claimed to be. The old symbolic traditions have a name for this energy. It is the archetype of the devil, not in the theatrical horns and brimstone sense that the modern imagination defaults to, but in the precise and psychologically sophisticated sense that the ancient readers intended. The devil card, in its truest reading, depicts two figures in chains, and the most important detail, the one that changes everything about what the image means, is that the chains are loose, they could be removed. The figures are not prisoners in the way that force creates prisoners. They are prisoners in the way that belief creates prisoners. Held not by what actually constrains them, but by what they have come to believe constrains them. By the story that this is simply how things are. By the accumulated weight of investment and history and the sunk cost of having already given so much that leaving feels like losing everything rather than gaining the one thing that actually matters themselves. You got out. However it happened, whether you were the one who finally, with shaking hands and a heart that was exhausted past the point of negotiation, chose to leave, or whether the ending arrived through their choices, through the collapse of something they could no longer sustain, the pretense of the chains came off. And what I want to speak to tonight is not the ending itself, but what the ending reveals. What becomes visible in your life, in your body, in your sense of what is possible, now that the thing that was consuming so much of your light has been removed from the equation. Let me ask you something. Think back not to the worst moments, not to the arguments or the disappointments or the specific incidents that made the wrongness undeniable, but to the quieter erosion, the slow, nearly imperceptible way that certain parts of you went underground over the course of this relationship. The opinions you stopped voicing because the energy required to defend them was more than you wanted to spend. The interests you let go quiet because they were met with indifference or something worse than indifference. The friendships that thinned, the ambitions that dimmed, the version of yourself that existed before this person entered your life, confident in certain ways, certain of certain things, occupied by a particular quality of aliveness that you may not have even noticed was leaving until it was largely gone. That is what the devil energy does. It does not announce itself as destruction. It operates as gradual replacement, substituting its own priorities for yours so slowly and so consistently that the substitution feels, eventually, like simply who you are now, like growth, even like the maturity of someone who has learned to want less, need less, expect less, when in fact what happened was not maturation but diminishment. Not the natural evolution of a person finding their center, but the systematic dismantling of a center that was inconvenient to someone who needed you without one. And now it is gone from your house. Now, the space it occupied, which was enormous, far larger than it was ever supposed to be, far larger than any single relationship should ever be allowed to grow in the architecture of a person's life, is empty. And empty spaces in the immediate aftermath of what filled them feel wrong. Feel like absence rather than possibility. Feel like something is missing rather than something is finally, mercifully, structurally removed. The emptiness is not comfortable. I know that. The silence where the chaos used to be can be its own kind of disorienting. The nervous system that organized itself around managing a difficult dynamic does not immediately know what to do with the absence of that dynamic. It may reach for it, even. May manufacture its own tension to fill the void, because tension, at least, is familiar. This is normal. This is the body and the psyche doing what they always do in the aftermath of a significant loss, even the loss of something that was hurting you. Grief does not require that what is lost was good for you. It requires only that it was present, that it was woven into the fabric of your daily experience, that its removal leaves a shape behind. You are allowed to grieve the shape. You are allowed to miss the warmth that existed alongside the harm, because they were not separate experiences. They came in the same package, and the departure of one required the departure of the other. Grieve the warmth. You are not obligated to grieve the harm alongside it, and you are not obligated to return to what caused both in order to feel the warmth again. That warmth exists elsewhere, in forms that do not come with the harm attached. Something is returning to you. It is early, yet too early, perhaps, for you to feel it with any certainty, too close to the ending for the beginning of the return to be clearly visible. But I feel it in your energy with a specificity that I want to name, because I think you need to know that it is coming even before it arrives. Parts of yourself that went underground are beginning to stir quietly, tentatively. The way things emerge after a long winter, not with confidence initially, not with the full bloom of what they will eventually become, but with the first fragile evidence that they survived. That the cold did not kill them, that beneath the surface of everything that has felt frozen or lost or irrecoverably altered, something was waiting, something that belongs to you in a way that nothing and no one can permanently remove, because it is not contingent on circumstances, not dependent on another person's permission, not alive only in the context of being chosen. It is simply you, the you that existed before, the you that will exist after, the you that the relationship spent considerable energy trying to convince you was too much or not enough, or in need of constant revision to be acceptable. That you is not gone. It went quiet for a while. It went underground for a while, into the safe dark of the parts of yourself that are too essential to be entirely extinguished, even by sustained pressure. And it is beginning, in the new silence of your life, to remember that the surface is available again, that there is light again, that the thing that kept it underground has been removed and the soil is open and it can grow. Let it grow. Do not rush it, and do not force it, and do not measure its pace against any external standard of how quickly someone should recover from something like this. Recovery from this particular kind of loss, the kind that involved not just the end of a relationship, but the slow reclamation of a self that was quietly diminished inside. It does not move on a schedule that anyone else gets to set. It moves at the pace of the truth. And the truth in this case is that you are rebuilding something that was systematically dismantled over time, which means the rebuilding will also take time. That is not failure. That is simply how the mathematics of this particular experience works. What I want you to know, what I feel with a clarity that I want you to carry into the days ahead, when the clarity is harder to access, is that what is being rebuilt is not a diminished version of what was there before. This is one of the stranger and more beautiful truths about the aftermath of difficult relationships. The person who emerges from the other side of this kind of experience is not simply the person who went in restored to their previous state. They are more specific about what they will and will not accept, more attuned to the subtle signals that the previous version of them learned to override, more certain at a level below argument of the difference between what love actually feels like and what its convincing imitation feels like, more themselves in a way, because the experience of losing yourself and then finding your way back tends to produce a quality of self-knowledge that simply cannot be acquired any other way. That knowledge is yours now, permanently. No future relationship, no matter what it brings, can take from you the clarity that this one ultimately gave you, the bone-deep, experientially verified understanding of your own worth, your own limits, your own non-negotiables, the things you will never again allow into your house because you now know, with the authority of someone who has lived the consequence, what they cost. The devil is out of your house, and what moves into the space, it vacated not immediately, not without the necessary time of reconstruction, but eventually, inevitably, as the truth of who you are reasserts itself in the cleared and open space of your life, will be something that actually belongs there, something that does not require you to be less, something that does not mistake your softness for weakness, or your depth for inconvenience, or your need for reciprocity for an unreasonable demand. Something that meets you at the full height of who you are and does not flinch. That is what the space is being prepared for. That is what the emptiness is making room for. And the emptiness, uncomfortable as it is necessary, because the house that is truly ready for something good is not the one that never emptied. It is the one that emptied completely, aired out, let the light back in, and then chose very carefully what to invite across the threshold next. You are in that process. The airing out is happening, the light is returning, and the choosing, the deliberate, self-possessed, absolutely non-negotiable choosing of what you allow into your life from here is the most powerful thing you will do in this chapter. Do it slowly, do it honestly, do it from the full height of the person you are becoming, rather than the contracted height of the person the last relationship needed you to be. The separation was not a failure, it was a door, and what is on the other side of it is a version of your life that could not have existed while what was in your house was still there. Walk through. The air on the other side is clean, and it has been waiting for you longer than you know. If this found you at exactly the moment you needed it, if something here named what you have been living through and could not yet articulate, stay close, subscribe, and come back. Because the story of who you are becoming on the other side of this is one worth following all the way to its most luminous chapter. And that chapter is already being written.